I didn't chase after her. Not when she slammed the door so hard it shook the walls, and not as her footsteps echoed, fading into the distance, swallowed up by the endless corridor. Not even when my heart roared, begging me to run after her, to kneel before her and demand answers. I stood still, frozen in the silence that followed. It was the kind of quiet that rattled the bones, louder than any argument or shout ever could. They say standing still is a sign of weakness, that if you don't fight for what you love, it was never truly real. But those people have never known the weight of a battle that drags on so long that when the one you're fighting for has already slipped beyond your grasp, you have no fight left. So I stayed still, not out of indifference, but because I finally chose to honor myself. She walked away on a Thursday night, and I can still picture it like it was yesterday. The pasta sat untouched on the stove, steam still rising from the plate, the aroma of basil filling the room, thick with the kind of intimacy we used to share. She said she needed space, but I knew that wasn't the whole story. There was someone else, or perhaps just the idea of one. Someone who didn't leave socks on the floor, someone who remembered anniversaries, someone whose feelings didn't burn so fiercely, so recklessly. She never said out loud, but she didn't need to. The way her eyes avoided mine as she packed her suitcase spoke volumes. The way her face stayed dry as she said her goodbye. That was all the confirmation I needed. I nodded just once, quietly. In that moment, I chose peace over pride. Her absence left behind shadows, the weight of our shared history pressing down on me, and a pain that sank deep into my chest, an unwelcome guest I couldn't shake. The weeks that followed were strange, a quiet kind of solitude. I roamed through the house like a ghost. Her mug still sat by the sink, untouched. Her scent lingered in the hallways. It was like she had never really left. Yet, somehow, she was gone. The silence of it all was louder than any argument we'd ever had. But I didn't reach out. I erased her contact from my phone, not out of anger, but out of discipline. I avoided her social media. Didn't ask our mutual friends about her life. I didn't need to know. Instead, I turned inward, seeking the person I was before her. I started to rebuild, slowly, piece by piece. I returned to the gym, lost myself in novels, and found joy in quiet moments. Small, ordinary things that no longer required validation from anyone else. Healing, I learned, isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet, persistent kind of mercy, one that takes time, but eventually makes you whole again. 91 days later, her name appeared on my phone, not in the form of a call or an apology letter, but a simple message. Hi, can we meet? I stared at the screen, my heart stirring with the same wild rhythm it used to have when she was near. But this time it wasn't longing. It was hesitation, a flicker of hope, tempered by caution, and a love that had once been so fierce now softened by the passage of time. I didn't reply immediately. I let the message sit, just as she had left me to sit, without answers, without explanation. When I finally responded, my fingers hesitated over the keyboard. I wrote, "If you want closure, come by. If it's something else, don't come unless you're sure." That evening, she showed up at my door. I opened it, and for a fleeting moment, she felt like a stranger, not because she had changed on the outside, but because something inside her had dimmed. The fire that used to burn so brightly in her eyes was now a dull glow. She stood there, holding a small envelope, her hands trembling as though it contained all the words she couldn't find the courage to say. We didn't hug, didn't speak. We just looked at each other, two people bound by memory, now distant and uncertain. She broke the silence first. "I messed up," she murmured, her voice cracking. It sounded raw, like a worn-out record. I thought I needed more. I thought there was someone better. But he wasn't you. No one could be you. I stayed quiet, my heart heavy with something I didn't want to feel. She continued, her voice shaky. "I convinced myself you didn't understand me, that you didn't care enough, but I was the one who stopped seeing you. You were always there. I just chose to look away." Still, I said nothing. She placed the envelope on the table, as if leaving it there would somehow explain everything. "This holds everything I couldn't say then," she said softly. "Everything I've come to understand. You don't have to read it now. Or ever. I just needed you to have it. I looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time in months, and realized she wasn't the woman who had walked away, and I wasn't the man she'd left behind. I waited for you, I said quietly, my voice calm but firm. For so long. Every night felt like a puzzle with no answer. But then slowly, I stopped searching for solutions. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I started healing. Tears welled up in her eyes. I'm too late, aren't I? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, giving myself a moment. It would have been so easy to say no, to pretend the scars didn't exist, to slip back into the comfort of what we had. I said softly, but I couldn't betray the journey I've taken. She bit her lip, nodding as the weight of my words settled in. I could see the ache in her, the regret, the realization that she had lost something. But it wasn't just me she had lost. Yes, I said gently. You are. A silence fell between us, but it wasn't tense or bitter. It was just honest. She nodded, her voice barely a breath. I just needed you to know. You didn't lose me. I lost you. I nodded in return, the words still lingering between us, heavy but true, and I found myself. She stood, slowly, and moved toward the door. At the threshold, she turned to look at me one last time. I hope you find someone who sees you the way I should have, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I smiled, not with triumph, but with something softer, something deeper, serenity. I already have, I said, barely more than a murmur. I see myself now. And with that, she was gone. This time, it wasn't dramatic. No final pleas, no second chances. Just a quiet goodbye, wrapped in truth. Not every broken heart needs to be fixed. Sometimes, the healing comes in silence. The greatest love story you'll ever live is the one you create with yourself. If you've ever had to let someone go, someone you once held close, you're not alone. Share your story. We're all mending together.